Hello everyone, in this episode we will show you how to configure and work efficiently with your SSH service on Kali Linux. We will go through configuring the sshd.config, changing some default settings, monitoring system authentication logs so you can have full control of what is happening behind the scenes when it comes to your SSH server. We will also show you how to transfer and copy files securely over an SSH connection using the scp command. Moreover, we will use TMUX in order to show you how to open and split multiple SSH sessions, detach and attach new sessions, share and mirror sessions over SSH, and more. This episode will help you enhance your knowledge in the Linux environment, specifically helping you work smarter and more efficiently when it comes to using SSH, as we know most of the time you will spend a lot of time using the terminal, and losing a connection as you are connected can result in damages. So the first thing we'll look at is configure sshd.config services. The second thing we'll look at is monitor system authentication logs. The third thing we'll look at is securely copy files and directories between two locations. The fourth thing we'll look at is split sessions over SSH via TMUX. The fifth thing we'll look at is create shared TMUX sessions. And the sixth thing we'll look at is create shared sessions over SSH via TMUX. So before we start, we will explain some major things and tools that we will be using in order to help you better understand the overall episode. So what is SSH? SSH, also known as Secure Shell or Secure Socket Shell, is a network protocol that gives user, particularly system administrators, a secure way to access a computer over unsecured network. SSH also refers to the suite of utilities that implement the SSH protocol. Secure Shell provides strong password authentication and public key authentication, as well as encrypted data communications between two computers connecting over an open network such as the internet. In addition to providing strong encryption, SSH is widely used by network administrators to manage systems and applications remotely, enabling them to log into another computer over a network, execute commands, and move files from one computer to another. The collective scripts create the files that the controller uses to log into member services that use public and private key authentication, which is the most secure authentication SSH method. To protect public and private key authentication keys, access to the files that contain the keys needs to be restricted to the user who owns the key. Permissions on the directories or files that hold SSH keys must not allow write access to the Unix group or other permission bits. For example, SSH does not work correctly if the permissions are 770, 775, or 777. Strict modes. OpenSSH enables the strict modes option by default. Strict modes disable the use of public and private key authentication if the required files are not properly protected to protect public key files when security is too relaxed. So we will show you how to avoid problems with SSH in a collective. You will learn to avoid problems with SSH in a collective. Security problems usually relate to a user not having access to a resource because security is too restrictive. The SSH configuration option strict modes protects public and private key files against the opposite problem when security is too permissive. SSH provides secure communications between system without password authentication, but SSH does not work if the permissions on certain directories and files are not strict enough. So what is TMUX? The official verbiage describes TMUX as a screen multiplexer similar to the GNU screen. Essentially, that means that TMUX lets you tile Windows panes in a command line environment. This in turn allows you to run or keep an eye on multiple programs within one terminal. A common use case for TMUX is on a remote server where you have a common layout that you always use and want a way to quickly jump into and out of. An example would be if you're connecting through a jump server and have other remote SSH sessions you would like to be connected to simultaneously. Similarly, if you have to hop into Vim or Nano, you can use TMUX to give you access to your shell or a REPL in the same terminal window for an IDE-like experience. So without further ado, let's jump in. So first, we're gonna run nano on the specific directory, which is the configuration file that comes on your SSH. As you can see from here, we're gonna show you how to change certain settings, starting with changing the default port. So you can remove the comment and change the port to the lightnings that you want. Then we're going to specify a listen address. If you leave it 0.0.0.0, it's going to take whatever IP address it gets. However, specifically, you can define the IP address so only when the specific IP address is connected, it's going to authenticate. Now, the reason you want to change the port is sometimes Nmap scanners can detect default ports, and it's better to change it to a different one. So now that we have changed the port and we have changed the listen address, we're going to move into showing you how to tweak as well the authentication. So providing the login grace time by uncommenting is going to give you a grace time period of 2 minutes to log in. After 2 minutes, it's going to log out. And now we're going to change also the permit root login to yes. This is going to allow the root user to log in as root. So changing also the strict modes to yes, as we explained earlier, and the max authentication tries to 3. Max sessions, you can modify it to lower it as well. So authentication tries is after 3 tries, it's going to stop letting you authenticate, and max session 6 is going to allow only 6 TMUX sessions on the same SSH server. You can also choose to change the settings into public and private key. In this example, we're showing you how to enable root access using the default password method. This is why you're going to enable the password authentication to yes and permit empty passwords to no. Now that we have changed some settings, you can try it as well on your client. And as soon as you do, you need to save the configuration and restart the service again so they can take effect. Feel free as well to add banners and other settings, as you can see from here, by uncommenting anything that you want to add. So now we're going to save the specific configuration, and we're going to go ahead and restart or start the SSH service and make sure that it's running. So service SSH start is going to start the service, and then you can check it with status. You can see it's running. So right now we're going to check the local IP address, and we're going to try to connect to the SSH that we just configured. So since we gave it the IP address, we have to give the IP address that you can see from here, which is going to let us connect to it using SSH and the specific port that we changed, which is the default one. So providing the following command with -p7 is going to establish the connection. It's going to create a new key and save it to the list of known hosts. After providing the password, we have successfully logged in to the new specific server that we connected that we just configured. So as you can see, we are already in the remote server, which is using the IP.15. And in order to confirm this, we're going to use NeoFetch to check out the specific specifications of the machine. So as you can see, it's using i5 CPU, and this is the remote server. And now we're going to open the specific local server that we're using, which is a local machine, and it shows you that it's using a different CPU, which is Ryzen 7. So now you know that you have 2 specific sessions, the locally and the one that we connected via SSH. So it is important as well to understand that whenever you're inside an SSH session, to understand not to have any mistakes and run commands locally. So we're going to show you how to tail the log files and monitor everything that has been done on the SSH session. So tailing the specific file, which is under var log auth.log, is showing you, as you can see from here, everything that took place on the log files of the SSH. You can see it has created a new session, opened a session for the root user, and then closed it. So we're going to create a file called test.txt. So to do this, you can do it using touch test.txt. Now we're going to use nano test.txt in order to add some text inside it. So we're going to type something like hello world and some data, so that we can actually show you how you can transfer and copy files from your local machine to the remote machine using SCP through SSH connection. So as you can see, the content of cat test.txt has hello world, and on the bottom session, we're using the SCP, which is locally. As you can see, the usage has a specific format so that you can copy the test that we just created to the remote machine. So in order to do this, we're going to start using the command scp followed by -P, which is 7. If you don't use this, it's going to use the default port 22. Since we changed it, we're using port 7, followed by the name of the file, and then you're going to give root at the remote IP address of the SSH machine that we want to transfer the file, followed by semicolon, and the location directory where you want to save the file. So this whole command is going to completely and easily copy the file that we have just created, test.txt, on the remote machine. So on the top is the remote machine. You can see there is no test.txt, and after issuing the command on the bottom terminal, providing the password of the remote host, as soon as we do this, it's going to copy test.txt. So as you can see, it has successfully copied test.txt since you've already seen the confirmation of the file. So typing ls right now, we're going to see that on the remote machine, the specific file has been copied successfully. So this is very important, especially when you want to transfer files between one machine to another remotely, or when you're using VPS servers connected to SSH sessions. It is the fastest and secure way in order to transfer such files from one machine to another using the terminal. And your connection will be tunneled through SSH, which is providing some sort of secure connectivity. So moving on, we're going to show you how to use TMUX right now. And typing TMUX is actually going to open TMUX session within your terminal. So as you notice, we have SSH saying on the bottom with the 0, which means we have one session connected. We recommend for you, as you can see, we're browsing through different keyboard shortcuts to look into the manual and try to memorize or create your own shortcut keys so you can use them efficiently and master how to use TMUX using your keyboard shortcuts. We just managed to split a session. So you can see that we have two sessions right now. One that is running under SSH and another one under number 1. And as you can see, there are two sessions on the bottom. So creating multiple sessions is very useful, and you can create up to 6 since we configured it to accept only 6 sessions. As you can see, we can split between each specific session and choose which one you want to work on. So on one session you could be updating, on another session you could be browsing, and you can easily switch between these two sessions. This way, if a connection is lost, you can also use it on the second session that you're using. And as you can see, the star indicates on which session you are connected to. So you have to memorize how to configure the keyboard shortcuts from the manual using TMUX, and as you can see, we can simply switch between the sessions easily using the keyboard shortcuts. So now we're gonna look into the IP address of the machine that we're using, and we're gonna show you some more things how to handle using TMUX. So assuming you're working on a session, as you can see from here, and we want to split the terminal so that we can open another session from within the terminal itself. It is useful to split the terminal either vertically, and you can use it as well using the shortcuts that you can find. So for example, we're going to split the terminal into 2, and this will allow you to use the separate terminal to perform other tasks. So as you can see, we have split the terminal into 2 halves, and the below section shows you which terminal that you're using. And now we can simultaneously go into full screen to the session that you want to work, or keep it into split mode. This is very important because when you learn how to split sessions using the keyboard shortcut, then you can easily perform multiple tasks from within the terminal itself. Another method is, as you can see the semicolon from the bottom, you can provide it with split-window, and it can split it as well in case you don't want to do the shortcuts that comes with the keyboard. So as you can see, it allows you to create different types of commands from within the terminal. So now we're going to create a new session. We're going to call it tmux new -s for backup session. So backup session is going to provide you a backup session when you're working on it. This is very useful because if you lose connectivity, you can connect and attach back the session without losing the content. So as you can see, it has created the session called backup ses 0, as you can see from the bottom. And we're going to show you how to detach the session and reattach it. So when you detach a session, it still continues to run in the background. So in case you lose connectivity or you close the connection, as you can see, it says kill pane. We have exited the session. But the important thing is, even though we exited the SSH session, it is still running in the background. As you see, we have reconnected to the session. And this is very important because this way you won't have to lose any connection. Let's say you want to run a task using the SSH connection. And we're going to show you this and demonstrate it using the BPY-top, which is an application that shows you the statistics of your machine. So as you can see, right now we're running using the backup session that we created, the specific application which shows you in details all of the resources of your machine. assuming you want to exit the specific session and detach it, and you want to create another session to continue doing something else. What you want is not to lose the running tasks that you are using, and you want to create another session, work on it, while this session runs in the background. So you can see it says detached from session backup session. We're going to show you how to reattach the session without losing the task. So although we left it, you can confirm that it's still running using ts auxiliary, which is AUX, pipe grep, and then the name of the tool, which is bpytop. As you see, it is still running, and the process ID is under 12068. So this means that although we exited the session, we basically detached from the session. Detaching from the session does not close the session. As you can see, the process is still running in the background. Now the more interesting thing is when you want to reattach the session and connect to it so you can resume your task, even though we have logged out, as you can see, we've logged out completely of the machine. We're going to reconnect to the machine right now, and although we have completely closed the session on the machine, let's say you've lost connection to it, the running tasks on the SSH session that you created is still working. In order to confirm and reattach it, we're going to go ahead and use TMUX with the command attach and then name the session that we were using earlier. So providing the tab, we've resumed access to the SSH session that we were initially using. So this is a breakthrough thing to learn for you as administrators, or if you're working remotely on different types of machines. A lot of times you've lost connection to an SSH, and this will allow you never again to lose any connection while performing using TMUX, detach and attaching different SSH sessions, even if you lose the connection to it. So now that we have performed this is going to give you a more advantage over how you work with SSH sessions without losing anything and creating more sessions while you can browse through them. So backgrounding and foregrounding tasks that are running using SSH is crucial and really easy to do with TMUX. So moving to another example, we're going to split the session, and what we're going to show you now is how to share a session with a user. So let's say you want to share it with another user so that they can open and see what you're doing on your SSH, whether you're showing or instructing somebody to look at what you're doing on their SSH session, or you want to mirror it so that you can monitor as well what a user is doing on the SSH session. So we're going to get the IP address of the specific machine, and we're going to show you how to share a session so that what goes on one session goes onto the other one. The way it's done, it will mirror the same session remotely on two different machines. This is amazing because you can pass sessions between users and show them how to mirror the session. So whatever you type on one specific terminal can be seen on the other one. In order to do this, we're going to use TMUX again. However, this time we're going to use a different command in order to create a session. Before we do this, if we try to attach a session that we just exited earlier, it's going to say no sessions. So in order to list the sessions, you can type TMUX list sessions, and it says no server running on the specific TMUX profile. So this is important because you might have different sessions and you want to share a specific one. So when you create a specific session, it's going to be listed under list sessions. This is the command to use so that you can choose which session you want to share it and mirror it to another user. So for example, we're going to use TMUX new session -s, and we're going to call it Cal. As you can see, this is the shared session that we're going to use on the right side, which is a different machine, so that the session that we're using on the left side is going to be shared and mirrored on the right side. To do this, we're going to use TMUX list sessions, and as you can see, it has showed us the Kali shared session that we just created. And now we're going to jump into the specific session. So it's very easy because all you have to do is to attach the session using the session name that you created. So typing TMUX attach -t for the session, you can see whatever is being typed on one session will be mirrored to the other one. This is really important as well. You can use it with different techniques so that you can monitor a user what they're doing or if you want to instruct and explain to another user how to perform a certain task. You can do this because you're actually sharing the same session, mirroring it to another remote machine securely, and this can be done using TMUX. So you can run remote commands and share them locally using this SSH session and TMUX, and never worry about losing any connection for any reason. So in conclusion, this episode will help you understand how to use the terminal efficiently, especially when you're using SSH, whether you are using it on Kali Linux or any other flavor. So you can go ahead and give it a try as well and try to simulate what we've done here. So hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for watching, and as always, until next time. So also we want to give a big thank you to all our patrons on this channel on Patreon. So Patreon is a different and separate platform from YouTube where you can find exclusive content that you cannot find anywhere else. You can ask us anything in our Q&A sessions, be the first to vote on our next episodes throughout our polls, and get exclusive hacking videos twice a month. Check the link in the description for more info. So thank you for watching, and as always, until next time.